Well, here I am, just about to go out and enjoy myself for a day's boat fishing on Bow Beach Reservoir. Before I go out, I'll run through a few things about the boat itself and the tackle I'm going to use, hopefully to catch a few fish. Firstly, even before I go through that, I've got my life jacket on. Vital importance has already been explained. The boat itself is a 16-foot glass reinforced plastic boat. It's a very nice boat. It's broad, it's got plenty of buoyancy. Generally, it's the sort of boat that would be comfortable for a day's fishing. Secondly, I've got carpeting in the well of the boat, which will both deaden the noise of my feet and, of course, will give additional padding should I be fortunate enough to catch a pike. I've also got a very large unhooking mat. I've got a 3 horsepower Minn Kota engine. It's vital when looking to troll on these large reservoirs to have the use of electric power if at all possible, because it makes the day a lot more easier on you. Of course, I've got a 12-volt deep cycle battery to power that engine. I've also got an echo sounder. Now, they're quite interesting pieces of equipment, and one that's only recently become available to be used by us as pike anglers. A lot is said about them, and there's a little controversy. My own view is, I don't necessarily believe everything on here is a fish, but nevertheless, they're very informative in finding out the bottom contours and the various points, and trying to identify the various points where pike could be waiting to ambush. Moving down through the boat, I've got obviously the oars as is required and gloves. A lot of people don't realise when first going out into a boat that the temperatures out there on the water is often up to 10 degrees lower than on the bank. You must make sure you have good equipment to keep you warm and dry when out on the water itself. The rods and the equipment there. These are 11-foot and 2 3/4 pound test curve rods. I prefer to use 10 or 11-foot rods in boats because I think, whilst on the one hand, whilst they give you sufficient length, should be required to keep a fish away safe from the anchor cable, on the other hand, they're not too long to become unwieldy in a boat. This particular rig, I shall explain it to you in some detail, is a bottom bouncing rig. Got the main line coming down to a Barclay crosslock onto the trace, and I'll come back to the trace in a minute. But about a foot above it, I've got a stop knot and I've got a small poly ball. Then I've got 2 foot of line, then I've got a weight. And the idea is that this will go down to the bottom, and as I slowly troll around the reservoir, the trout or other bait at this end will go up and down and will look very appetising to the pike, hopefully who knows I'm going to draw it across. This rig has been used in a number of places and has been proved to be very, very effective. On the hooking rig itself, I've got a large bait holding hook, a large single. This one's a 4.0. And I've got 2 separate traces coming out which go either side of the bait, obviously on the one hand to secure the bait itself, but more importantly on the other to actually hopefully hook the pike. A lot of people don't realise, but often, particularly on rigs like this, pike will attack in the vent area of the prey fish, and therefore it's quite important to have hooks near the back of the fish. Equally, it's important to have hooks on either flank at different parts, so whichever part of the bait the pike grabs hold of, you stand a decent chance of hooking the fish. The other rig I have here is a float trolling rig. Again, used quite a lot in pike fishing today. It's a large float. This one is made by Ryobi, which, when trolled slowly, will make a slight wake in the water. I've got here one of the Marvick weights, which is very important because they have a silicone tube through them and they don't make any wear on the line. Again, I have a crosslock, and I have again a long trace going down to a bait holding hook, except on this one I have 2 trebles in tandem which will go down the side of the bait. This again will give you the opportunity hopefully to hook the fish should it go wherever part of the bait it grabs. I've got a stop knot here which obviously I vary in depth as I troll around the reservoir, and that is in fact the depth that the bait is trolled at, although you always must remember the faster you troll the more the bait will come up in the water on a float rig, so therefore you've got to compensate by the depth you set it at. Moving down the boat, there's a few other things very important. One of the most important pieces of fishing in the day out in the reservoir is the bailer. On the one hand, obviously, if you're unfortunate enough to be out there when it's raining, it allows you to empty the boat And often when starting of the morning, there's water in the boats too. It allows you to bail that out. But also it's for personal comfort. For the guys amongst you who are out there fishing, it's the best way in which you can have a pee. Anyway, let's get on. Another piece of equipment that I particularly find useful in boats is a collapsible landing net. Now, obviously any large landing net is of use in the boat, but this particular one, you can leave it down, and if there's two of you, only put it up when you've hooked to fish, or if you're on your own, like I will be in shortly, I can go out there and only put it up when I'm actually fishing, therefore it doesn't take up and clutter the boat. They're very good and very good for retaining fish itself. Lastly, I've got a good anchor. This particular anchor will grip in the mud and will make sure that when I put it in, hopefully the boat won't drift. It's got a fair length of chain, which again lays it on the bottom and makes sure the anchor digs in. What you must remember is you must have a fair amount of cable out. Don't have the anchor cable going straight, have it at an angle, and the greater the angle, the greater potential grip of the anchor itself. Lastly, I've got a tube here. Should I be fortunate enough to catch a fish in the boat, what is vitally important is, firstly, I unhook it, and secondly, I retain the fish. Now this will retain the fish comfortably alongside the boat while I sort myself out, should I be fortunate enough to catch a fish big enough for a trophy shot. Anyway, that's all my bits and bobs. I'm going to go fishing.